Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon for the second session of the Park State University seminar series for drinks entrepreneurs. The topic in this session is growing your drinks brand. And we asked Dan Gasper to be our session leader. For those of you who don't know Dan, which I think is nobody, but in case if there's anybody, Dan Gasper is the drinks entrepreneur, I would say, because he is right now planning something great. He can't tell anybody what it is. We're all very excited to hear. But he was previously in different entrepreneurial ventures. He was the COO and one of the founders of Distill Ventures. So here I'm going to hand it over to Dan. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Harry. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for the introduction, Harry, and thank you for letting us be part of your first Park Street University business talks at BCB Berlin. So this talk is all about growing your drinks brand in today's global drinks market. So first, I'll introduce myself. My name is Dan Gasper. I've been working in the drinks industry for almost 20 years now, and for the past 10 years, I've been coaching, supporting, and working with independent founder-led drinks businesses. 5 years ago, as Harry mentioned, I co-founded the world's first drinks accelerator called Distill Ventures, which was backed by a small drinks business called Diageo. And I'm now an independent man of booze, as my LinkedIn profile says, coaching some of the world's brightest independent drinks entrepreneurs. As an independent drinks entrepreneur in today's business, it's incredibly difficult to get really great, bright information about what's going on in the drinks industry now. You can read a book, but they'll be kind of 5 years to 10 years out of date, and you could speak to someone who's in the middle of their journey, but they might not have the right context, or they might be on a different journey to you. The panel that I've brought together today are some of the brightest minds in the international drinks world. Rather than me introduce them, I'd like them to introduce themselves. They're going to tell you who they are, their business, and why they love working in the drinks business.
Yep. So I'm Andrew Beebe. I now work for Arlington Capital, running their spirits practice. We're an investment bank helping companies look to raise funds or find an investor or a venture company to purchase them. Prior to that, I worked at Diageo for 8 years, running on strategy, M&A, and innovation finance for North America. Started up their venture capital group, which is where I met Dan, and then lastly spent 2 years building a brewery for Guinness in Maryland. So got into the industry because I was very passionate about it, wanted to do something where I spent sort of my spare time reading, consuming, just being out there in market. And that's what I love about it the most, is that no matter if you're 40 days into the industry or 40 years, everyone that you meet, everyone sort of got into it because they love it. And that's why they stick around. That's why everyone traveled from around the world or just around the corner to be here and continue to travel around. It's just a great place to be, great industry, and it's very fun.
I think at that point I can stop talking why I'm in the industry, because it's pretty much that. My name is Maximilian Wagner. I'm one of the two founders of German Vermouth brand Belsazar Vermouth, which we were lucky enough to have integrated into the Diageo Reserve portfolio this year, March. Still pretty young in the industry, I must say. I slipped into it accidentally when I was looking for a job and found a small gin distillery in Munich. I then joined, worked there for 3 years, and out of that founded my own company with my business partner Sebastian Brack together in 2013. And you can see it's not long, we're not 150-year-old, a big history, but I think a lot to come, a lot to learn, and as Dan said, 5 years are technically nothing. So yeah, love the industry. It's about food and drinks. It's what we as humans can take into us. I think there's nothing more interesting or challenging at the same time.
My name is Spencer Forhart. I'm a co-founder of the Proof Collective. We're based in Singapore. We have offices across Asia Pacific. Again, a similar story, passion plus business. Dan asked me, why do you like your work? It's very simple. I'm an obsessive type of person. When I get interested in something, I do a deep dive on it. I often don't come out of the rabbit hole. I love everything about spirits. I love the history, I love the production, I love the cultures that surround it, I love the countries, I love the people. So spirits for me was a way to get my geek on, but to do so in a thriving, dynamic business community that's actually really growing and really developing, as you can see when you walk outside here today. So that's the why. The what, we started 7 years ago with a little bar in Singapore called 28 Hong Kong Street. It was a labor of love, it was a passion project. It exploded, and it showed us that there was a much bigger market, that there were bigger consumer shifts happening. We built a distribution company on the back of that called Proof & Company. It started out as a Singapore-only distribution company. It's now spread across Asia Pacific. We have offices in Hong Kong, Singapore, China, and Australia. We have affiliates in regional countries as well. And that's really the core of the business today. So we represent about 40 brand houses and 600 bottlings. Of course, some brand houses may have one bottling and some may have 50. But we're sort of a mid-sized importer and distributor, I guess you'd say.
We are trying to fit an insane amount of content into 45 minutes. So I have to thank this lot for putting up with this, for me coming up with this silly concept. I hope we've pitched the right level of information for you, the audience, today. So thank you. And without further ado, Andrew.
What I want to cover was really just talk about investors. Right? You've started your business, you're looking to start a business, right? You have the idea, you have the passion behind it, but how do you fund it going forward? Right? As you know, and as you look to investors, right, they provide money, but that's sort of the obvious piece of it. Additionally, really, they can provide a lot of other things to help accelerate your brand both today and a long time into the future. Right? They're able to come with funds, but they also come with a network. They have relationships both within the drinks industry, outside of the industry, that can help you both grow your business, build better contacts, as well as look for future investors. They also have expertise and knowledge, right? They've been around, whether it's a group of people from an investment fund, a wealthy individual that started their own business, they can bring experience and knowledge that can really help you avoid some of the pitfalls that they did. Also, they have an objective view, right? You have the passion, you're thinking about growing your business, you have a desire to get there, you've gone through, you've broken down walls, you've continued to grow your business. They can help provide sort of an objective view to really make sure that you're thinking about all the right things as you grow. But also, they'll have opinions, right? They'll have opinions on how you should grow your business, what you should be thinking about. So you do want to make sure that you have, right, the right investors that align to what you really want to do, both you, your company, and your vision for the brand. They also have expectations, especially when you look at financial investors. They are going to want to make a return, right? They are going to see how you're growing your business. They're going to want to make sure that you hit the targets that you talked about, that you forecasted when you went out to raise money, and they're looking for returns. And depending on who they are, they're going to look to figure out where you exit. So who do you eventually sell to in the long term? Also, they can be friends and partners, right? Starting up a business, growing a business, getting it off the ground and growing it, right, is very emotional. It's a roller coaster that you go through. They can be great friends and great supporters as you go through it. And also, depending on your type of investor, they also can provide broader access. If they are strategics, they can give you a distribution relationship. They have relationships with producers. They could do it themselves. They also have marketing and a whole bunch of other things that you wouldn't expect when you look at getting a brand and a partner. So if you look at it, right, selecting an investor is one of the most important things that you can do to think about growing and the future of your brand. This graphic right here is really just supposed to simplify and give you an idea to think about your business as you continue to grow along its path. It's right as you get going. It's pre-revenue, it's an idea, it's finally coming to life. You're probably doing everything yourself in terms of growing your drinks business. Right, you're just out there in market, you have a concept that's finally there, and you're just getting things moving. At this point in time, it's really early stage investors. They're betting on you, they're betting on an idea. There's not a lot of sales, not a financial or commercial performance that's supporting it. Then you'll continue to grow your business. You're becoming more of an established organization. You're starting to grow your team. If this was a part-time job, it has become full-time now. You're growing in your own market. You're looking to expand in additional markets, and you're actually seeing both strong financial and commercial growth. These investors are still looking at you. They're looking at your team and the idea, but they're also starting to see how you're performing in market. And then the next is positive EBITDA, or just positive profit. You're continuing to grow. You've established yourself in your current market. You've been able to grow into additional markets. You're starting to become a real established business. At this point in time, right, it's still you, it's still your team, but there's a lot more that's there in terms of the whole organization that's starting to grow. And then there's your future. Not really getting into that, but as you continue to grow, you can remain independent. You could look to sell your business on to someone else, or you could even, for some larger companies, look at IPO. And then you have different investor profiles below. We'll sort of walk through those in detail, except for sort of the crowdfunding option. But each of them look at you differently. They have different objectives, both in your early stages as well as when you grow up. The first is individual investors. These are friends, these are family, wealthy individuals. They're sort of who you go to first to be able to fund your business, right? They love you, they love the idea, they've probably heard you talk about it for years. years, and they're really proud to be with you on that journey. Right? They're great supporters. If you look at what they do bring to the table, they know you, right? They've been around, they understand what you're doing, they support you and the idea, right? There's very little diligence that they're going to do in terms of investing in your company. One, because of the size of it, but two, right, they've been around and they understand what you're looking to do. Also can get quickly funded because of these relationships. And they can be long-term investors, right? They're going to stick with you and be with you for that long haul. What you do need to consider here is, right, there'll be small checks as well as multiple investors that you have. So you're going to have to both manage them at the beginning as well as they have opinions and they look to, right, as they continue to expand, as you continue to expand, they will want to have a seat at the table and have opinions. They'll also have different views when you look at, right, exiting and their financial needs. Some of the things just basic that you'll want to think about with regards to your business is your shareholders agreement. So do you make sure that you have the right voting rights, that people know how to make decisions, that you can still run your business? Secondly, you need to set your value. Understand how you're worth today, how you're worth in the future, so you're getting the right shareholders. But overall, individual investors are a great way to get started. They're a great way to continue to fund the business if you're looking for someone to be there for the long term. Second are institutional investors, right? These are angel investors or incubators that are independent, sort of at the earlier stages. This is venture capital groups that are coming in to invest in brands that have proven themselves, that are continuing to grow in market. And then there's private equity firms that are looking for sort of later stage companies that are profitable. These are all looking to invest in both you. They believe in the spirits category, the overall growth there, but they are looking for above market returns. So they are financial investors. The benefits they do provide is they are professionals. They've invested in similar categories or the same category. They know what to look for in brands. They can talk to you about the financial performance as well as what's happening in the industry. They have expertise and a network to really help you accelerate your growth because that benefits all of you. They can provide growth capital, which is really there to accelerate your business, but also in later stages, they can provide liquidity. And that means you actually can sell some of your shares, recoup some of the investment for all of your hard-earned work, as well as some of your investors can as well. So they're a great sort of partner if you're looking at really accelerating your business and bringing in expertise. What you need to consider is that they are going to get into details around your business. They're going to want to get into the diligence. They're going to want to see your financial performance, your forecasts. So they will get into the business and understand all the different components to make sure that it is a sound investment. And they have performance expectations. They are looking for return. They are looking for growth. And they're skilled negotiators. So you want to make sure that you have the right sort of partners as you go through those conversations to make sure that you are getting the right deal. And they also have exit expectations. So they are looking to make money, whether you're selling on from an angel investor into a VC or beyond, but they do have expectations that there will be some type of transaction in the future. And lastly, you have strategic investors. Like my former company, Diageo, and many of the larger companies out there, they're really looking to invest in and get brands that will be a future part of their portfolio. Whether you come in early through an incubator program like Distill Ventures, later stage like ZX Ventures with the CVC, or you look at full sales, these are all strategic investors that are looking to build their portfolio and continue to grow and expand it through the access and distribution they have. The benefits that you have here is there's going to be no one else, no other partner that can provide you the level of expertise and detail just because of the overall network that these strategics have. They're also going to pay a premium because of what you can provide and what they're going to be able to do with the brand once it sort of enters their system. As with before, with the financial investors, they will give you growth capital. They'll also give you some liquidity, whether it's within the earlier stages or if you're looking to sell all or part of your business in the future. And obviously, the integration is a big benefit if you think about the ability to accelerate, depending on the way you look at marketing, distribution, and production. The considerations is that if you get in early, you're committing to a single buyer. There's generally terms or contracts that mean you have to commit to and think about a long-term relationship with these strategics. There's prearranged value and exit criteria, so you really are making that decision very early in your process. And also, you have to think about the impact to your organization. You've built a company. If you do sell it, there are the potential impacts to your organization as you look to integrate it. And then also, there are ways to continue to be involved even post an acquisition, whether it's marketing, whether it's production, whether it's still being the face and the founder of the brand. There's many different options that you want to consider as you look to talking with a strategic. In summary, as you think about it, there's many different ways to look at how you want to fund the growth of your business, depending on the size of your business, where you are within its current state and where you want it to be in the future. But as you go out and you look for a capital raise, there's sort of three big things you think about. One, make sure you understand what you're looking for in an investor beyond cash. We sort of quickly talked about all those different components up front, but those are some of the things you're really going to want to think about as you go out, both for your business, align a vision for your employees, for the overall company. Also have realistic expectations and huge ambitions. When you look at financial investors, you look at strategics, you're putting a forecast out there that people are going to invest behind. Make sure that you can hit that, because it will be very uncomfortable if you don't. But also have huge ambitions to continue to grow your brand. It got you where you are today, and it's going to continue to drive you and your business forward. And then the last one is, remember, you're going to be raising multiple times. So make sure that you think about the amount of money you're getting, how much equity you're giving away, and the value of your company, because you are going to have to go back out, and you don't want to be left after 10 years of hard work with a very small percentage of the business. Thank you.
Cool. That was great. Thanks, Andrew. Next up, Mr. Maximilian Wagner.
Would have been helpful to know of that, many of that stuff before, so that's pretty much how it goes. I can tell that. For me today is to talk about to love your local. I personally do not like the subline, why being king in your home should be number one. Yes, it always should be the target to become the king, but you never are the king. Because once you are the king, or you believe you're the king and you stop doing something, you will lose it. It's like you are never king. We are always moving forward. So I would like to focus on the task here, why it's more about selecting a market, and my arguments to why you should start in your home market first. I think putting the major aspect at the very first one, you know your country, you know the country, you know the place where you live. No matter if you're from here originally or moved somewhere, but you have reasons why you moved there. You know how the country works, you know which cities would work, for whatever you have in mind. You know the neighborhoods, and also giving that, knowing it starts very basic with geographical knowledge, you know, knowing there are 5 major cities in a country or something, which are they, where do the most people live, and what are consumers looking for in those markets. So because you have knowledge about the ethical backgrounds, religious backgrounds, which might influence the choice of your product, or how to market it, how to launch it, it's about knowledge. I think in general life is very important, but your home market is the one you know best. Again, knowledge never stops. You continue to learn. But in a market where you're actually at, where you live, where you produce, where you do everything, where you've grown up, it's easier to learn your market even further. You might not come, given that taking the drinks industry now, you might not come originally from the drinks industry, but you're getting your heads into it. It's easier to get information on what's the structure of the market, who actually sells to whom. Does the bartender directly buy from the producer? Eventually, some countries might work, others simply no. Sometimes it might be even legally forbidden in other countries. And all this knowledge to get is easier to learn and get home. Next big thing, learnings in terms of margin. Who earns what? Sounds ridiculous, of course, everybody has to earn some money, but it is a major point. You will have to know, when setting up your pricing structure, who should be given which margin in order to make my product end up at a price point where the people are actually willing and especially are able to buy it, so that that pays into the whole point of pricing. Getting the pricing right. It can be market knowledge will be as easy as going into a supermarket when you want to be a supermarket product and look at your competitors' prices. And many people think it might be rocket science. No, it starts easy as that. But when you want to launch in a foreign market and say, yeah, but I can check on the internet, you have no idea if you really end up on the sales prices on a whiskey exchange or whatever from any country, if you really get those prices which are really out there. It starts by walking literally as a human mankind into a shop and seeing what you get. This learning obviously never ends with the structure of your customers. I mentioned this before, with the value chain, who buys from what, who expects what, where can I actually directly sell into, or eventually not. The access to knowledge from the first place is easier, plus topping up your knowledge, getting involved into your market is simply always easier to get at the place where you actually live. Building up on the whole knowledge topic, why are we here in the first place? I don't know how many amongst you are literally sitting here today thinking, yeah, I really want to start it. Why? Because you spot an opportunity in the first place. When I'm sitting at home, I'm living in the Black Forest, unfortunately not in Berlin, I don't picture what a Guatemala product could look like. No, I just walk outside and see, what could actually work here in my home market. And I do get the idea of, see the opportunity, what might work. Harder to get this in a foreign country. In fact, the other way around, when you travel, keep an open eye and spot an idea somewhere else which you might actually be able to take back home. So again, your home market, again, looking back already, given all the knowledge you have, which is easier to exit, you will be able to spot the opportunity in the first place easier. Once you have the idea, once you gained your knowledge, we never know everything. It's not like that we stop ever. So at some point you simply have to start and test it. Now you can test it obviously very expensive by going abroad and saying, yeah, I'm buying 3 times a month, I'm flying 3 times a month to a foreign country, where you have to pay the flights. Whereas testing can be as easy as talking to friends, which you might have already in the industry, or you're making friends by getting to know them, which is easier when it's just around the corner, when it's at home, in your home market. Also by this, when you talk and listen to the people, you will get the feedback directly, and it's better than when you're going abroad. Let's say you're working with a distributor, he might tell you one thing, but if it's always the truth, if it's always what's really happening, that's way harder to estimate than actually if you can make the learnings yourself. The easy to grow part is kind of straightforward. You take the knowledge which you have and which you're gaining, and reinvest this knowledge into doing things better. You come up with a product, you show the labels to your friends, they all say it looks shit. So you might think about redesigning it and then taking it again further. If you launch into another market with somebody who already ordered a full pallet, that will be way harder to change and implement and actually make it grow even further. Growing a business always needs the unromantic part of business planning, which is pretty much a paper and a pencil or a laptop and Excel. But the whole business planning at the end, again, is based on knowledge. You know the scale of the market, which is important, because if you're planning to have a break even when you're selling 1 million units, but there may only live 200 people in your country, unlikely to get, depending on the product. The costs of competition. What does it cost me to be more effective than my competitors, to be more listened to it, to be able to market my product, to make people come across this? The business planning allows you in your home country to know which category you actually want your product to be in. And again, which cities. In a foreign market, again, somebody importing your product or distributing it might have a different view than you yourself. Also, you might have a different view on the foreign market as well, saying, oh, I know America, I know exactly which are the biggest 5 cities, and yes, of course, you have always to start in New York. Is that really the truth? It takes way longer to get this understanding and have this knowing and plan the business on a foreign market than it is at home. You know the statistics, you know the people, you know the prices. Take all this into consideration. You know the competition, you know your production prices. Make your business plan. It will be easier to show you what you can actually expect out of your business. Talking about business is quickly making sales. We all have this, we also had this point, you can develop a product and go further and make it nicer and collect more knowledge. At some point you have to sell. And before you lose time in setting up a structure in a foreign market, it's easier to find, to do this at home. For a foreign country, you will need to find partners, who know the market, who know the structure. Here, literally, take a bottle, go into a bar, say, hey, you want this? Yes, I want to. And if it's paying directly, as soon as your product is ready, you can start selling. And you don't need, let me tell you this, you don't need a map of Germany, let's say, with all the wholesalers already on there, and I want to be in everything before then I launch. No. At some point, you have to make money. Some investors might want to see some money coming back, and actually might like to see some sales there. So there's also no time to be lost to identify the targets as in foreign markets. Again, coming back to your market, you know what you can expect. One of the last arguments I'll put on sounds very basic. Eventually, you speak the same language. Now, obviously, I can say you speak the same language in terms you understand the same jokes. That's one thing, but I literally mean the language. If you are a German raised, and speak German or whatever your mother tongue is, try to find talking with the people who speak the same mother tongue as you, because you will always be, you always get the information directly and you will get it right. With foreign countries, where eventually, us Germans, I think we all believe we speak pretty well English. No, you don't. You never speak enough good of another language to really get 100%. And we're talking business here. We're going to another country. Business might grow and you might invest a lot of money in order to get the knowledge. You don't want to miss parts. Staying at home is as easy as you're speaking the same language. To sum it all up, when you think about it, your home market is the best market to start with, and it will be the easiest eventually to become king because you know it. You are personally here for a reason. You know the structure. Knowledge is easier accessible, and you know what's happening here. So that for me is the biggest reason to say start it at home, because mistakes you can make here, you will be easier to take them back and then do it right whenever you go abroad and expand eventually to other markets. So that's why you should be king first in your home market, I think.
Thank you, King Max. Cool, so now we're on to my section, and a bit of a spoiler alert, this might be the driest mini section of this entire talk. I'm really sorry, so this is the driest part of a dry business talk. But please stay with me, because what I'm going to attempt to explain in the next 8 minutes, sounds stupid, is what I think is one of the most important elements of commercial strategy, and one that can ensure that you, as a drinks founder, as a founder of a business, can be the master of your own destiny. As you'll hear from many of my co-panelists, and as you can see when you're out at BCB, anyone who's been here for the last, I think, is it 10 years it's been running now? The business of booze is very, very busy. 10 years ago, if you were an entrepreneur and you'd started a drinks company and you got a bottle on a back bar, it probably gave you sales. When Saint-Germain first popped up in the market, it was on a back bar, people would buy it because they'd say, what's that? I'll have one of those. But now your average back bar doesn't have 20 bottles, it has 100, or if you're in a cocktail bar, 300 or 400 or even 1,000. So the back bar no longer means volume sales, unfortunately. Don't get me wrong, being on a back bar is really useful, definitely a step in the right way. But if you want to make solid sales of your modern crafts, independent booze brand, then being on menus and being what we call premium upsell are the only places you're going to make real volume. Next up, we're going to talk a little bit about velocity. So what is velocity in drinks? It's an American term. It's not so commonly used over here, but in a very simple form, it's the number of bottles you sell per month divided by how many accounts you are in. And in the US, they use it as a great way to figure out how you're performing in a city or a market. Or you could use it for a country if you're in Europe. So I've worked with hundreds of different founders, and for me, the most important commercial knowledge that they have about their brand is detailed knowledge of the velocity in different kinds of accounts. So how does your brand sell in a cocktail bar? How does your brand sell in a restaurant? How does your brand sell in a neighborhood bar? What makes it sell more? What makes it sell less? Those tiny, tiny pieces of information that sound like castaway comments are the absolute nucleus of you knowing how to affect the growth of your brand. And why is this so important in this context? Because it allows you to create real sales forecasts. To create a real sales forecast, there are 4 bits of information that you need. They're not always easy to come by, but first I'm going to explain what they are, and then I'll talk a little about why they're not so simple to get. So first up is your rate of sale. The rate of sale is how many bottles you're selling per month. It's a pretty standard piece of jargon in corporate booze. It's probably less so in independent booze. So it's how many bottles you sell in one outlet per month. And it's a crucial part of your understanding. So first choose one type of account, say a cocktail bar, and you want to know how many bottles you're selling a month, whether you're on a cocktail menu, if you're on the like a specials of the month or that kind of menu, or whether you are the premium upsell from a house pour, so if you're the upsell for gin or the upsell for rum. Then, because you might have one account which does really, really well for you, a cocktail bar that sells 30 bottles a month, you need to find out if that's really the truth, if all cocktail bars that you're on a cocktail menu are going to do 30 a month, because it's probably not true. So you want to then have a look at that rate of sale. How does it differ from account to account? So maybe pick up 3 different cocktail bars. You've got one which is selling 15 a month, one that's selling 5, and one that's selling 10. Your average is going to be 10 a month. Okay? So now you know how much booze you're selling in a cocktail bar on average when you're on a cocktail menu. Another piece of information you need. So how does it differ between different types of bars? Like I said, how your product, if you're a Vermouth brand, how you sell in a restaurant might be very different to how you sell in a neighborhood bar. Just the same way if you're a craft beer brand, how you sell in a cocktail bar is going to be very different to how you sell in a restaurant. So trying to learn what is that rate of sale in different kinds of accounts when you're sold in different ways. Complex enough? And last but by no means least, you need to know how many accounts your sales team or salesperson or you can actually visit. What's the physical capabilities of you? Most businesses, most well-organized larger businesses will operate off the premise that one salesperson can probably have a meaningful relationship with 50 accounts. That's about the max, roughly 50. Some will say they can do more, but I doubt they're having meaningful relationships that generate cocktail listings. So, once you have this wonderful set of data, you can start to build a sales forecast. However, getting this information can be really difficult, which is why a lot of people just don't bother with this step in their business planning. And apologies if I upset anyone on my panel or anyone in the audience, but distributors don't often want to give you real sales data. They can do if you have a great relationship. We do, that's great. I don't have a brand. You'll always give that data to me. You hear that? He's always going to give me the data. But sometimes they don't. Sometimes they don't for a variety of reasons. They don't want you to give your sales data to other competitors in Europe. They don't want you to go and access those accounts directly without going through the sales team. A whole myriad of paranoia, generally. But you can get that data without being from the distributor. You can get anecdotal data from bar managers. They can tell you how many bottles are being sold a week. They can check their stock list. You can speak to the distributor's sales team and say, which of my accounts, do you know how much roughly they did last week? They'll have access to that information. You're not looking for cold, hard, massive amounts of data. You're looking for anecdotal but honest data. And you could also speak to brand ambassadors. So that all those people could be sources of finding bits of information from that last page. So get the data, and then the fun begins. So first I'm going to talk you through this format just to get you used to it, and we're going to build on this over the next few slides. On the left is the types of accounts that you might target. So we've got cocktail bars, for instance, restaurants, and neighborhood bars. And all the numbers in this example are going to be a gin brand that's operating, it was operating in Berlin last year. So they're real numbers, but I can't tell you who they're from. So then in the middle column are the ways you could promote that drink. So like I talked about earlier, it might be on a cocktail menu, it might be special of the month, it might be on an aperitif menu, different ways that you can promote the drink that aren't just on the back bar, that are actively selling your product in a bar. And then on the right-hand column is the rate of sale, the number of bottles they're selling a month. So next we'll add in 12 months for the year, because generally when you're writing a sales forecast, you want to write it for 12 months. You might want to write it for 18, but I think 12 is probably a good place to start if you're in the early days. Some of your investors might want longer plans, but for me, 12 months is a really good start. And then we're going to add in the number of accounts that I want my salesperson to target. So in this case, the salesperson was targeted with adding one account every month. So in January, he had one account. February, he had two, and so on and so forth, up to December, where he had 12 accounts. And that target was getting on cocktail menus in cocktail bars. So if I know that my rate of sale in a cocktail bar is 20 bottles, and I know that my sales guy can get at least one new cocktail menu every month, then over the course of the year, I know that a third of his time, roughly, or her time, roughly, is going to be spent getting me 1,500 bottles. Sounds good. But that's only a third of their time. What are they going to spend the rest of their time doing? So next up, I'm going to say, well, because I want my gin on an aperitif menu, I don't know why, but he did. And that aperitif menu roughly sells me 14 bottles a month. I know that, I've done my research, and that's what I can get. And my salesperson can add a bar a month again, and so I'm going to get to roughly 1,000 bottles out of really targeting just those 12 restaurant accounts. That's what I'm going to get for my year. And then last but by no means least, I really want to be in some neighborhood cocktail bars as well, or the neighborhood bars. There, the rate of sale is slower. It's 6 bottles a month, but it's important for me because maybe I'm a local brand, and these are all the bars that are around my distillery or something like that. So I'm going to target them again with just building one account every month. Over the course of the year, that means I'm going to sell another 500 bottles, just short of 500 bottles. So there you have a 3,000 bottle sales forecast written from the bottoms up. So over the course of the year, 36 bars, like I said, one salesperson, you've sold over 3,000 bottles. But why is all this important? Why am I getting into this much detail? Understanding how your brand sells in different kind of accounts is absolutely crucial to you. It means you can adjust your strategy. It means you can adjust your marketing to suit. It puts you in control of how your business is running. The other thing is it means you can target your sales team well. Most people who are starting out might have one salesperson. They might have half of their own time. Maybe you're lucky if you've got 2 salespeople. But those are expensive people to have out there, as any of you who have salespeople will attest to. It's a €50,000, €60,000, or maybe in the US, $100,000. That's a huge amount of money coming out of your pot every year. So making sure you can make the best impact and value out of spending that €50,000 is imperative. Not just letting them go and sell to anyone. When you're trying to get investment, if someone says, how are you going to sell 3,000 bottles in the first year? If you just say, hey, I reckon we can do it, doesn't really fill them full of belief. But if you can tell me, I'm going after these 3 types of accounts, this is exactly the rate of sale because I know, because I've gone out and got my anecdotal data, and these are the 3 kind of accounts that I want to be in and that we're going to go and test in, that's a great answer. That's a really solid answer. It's a far more solid answer than most people will have in this industry when you're asking them about investment. And last but by no means least is point 4. When you next write a sales forecast, you're not even basing it on assumptions you've already got. You're starting to build real strong knowledge about how your business performs in certain different accounts. And that bit for me is probably the most crucial. Like it says at the bottom here, your sales forecast, it will never happen exactly the way that you plan it. But the more knowledge you have, the better it will get. And without it, unfortunately, you're just guessing. Thank you.
All right, Dan gave me permission to be a little bit cheeky, so I'm going to tell you a fairy tale. And it's a fairy tale that's all true real. It happens routinely. Brand owner discovers a herd of unicorns, captures all of their tears, ferments those tears in petrified wood vats that magicians built for him, distills it in a solid gold still, hires friend and friend to build an awe-inspiring package which inspires awe. And then they all go out to market, and they think, oh, this is going to be great. This is going to be really easy. This is going to be a downhill run now. I've got amazing liquid. I've got an amazing package. And hey, I won a triple platinum at the Intergalactic Awards for Spirits in Saturn or something. It should be easy, right? And the answer is no, maybe 10 years ago, but not today. The reality is that there are a lot of fish in the sea. I'm going to use a metaphor today of marriage as your relationship with your distributor or your importer. A pretty product is not good enough. A great backstory is not good enough. It doesn't matter how pretty it is, how great the liquid it is, how awesome the backstory is. It's not enough. And the thing is that your relationship, the quality of your relationship, the quality of your marriage with your distributors and with your importers has more to do with your success from that point on, from the product creation point on, than anything else. And it's not something you can dictate. It's something that you have to build. So I've got 6 marriage counseling steps for you that we've learned in the course of the last 6 or 7 years. There are 15,000 independent brands out there in the world right now. That's a staggering amount of competition. And when you walk through this room, for those of you who have been here year after year, I imagine that you're seeing that every year the product quality is coming up, the packaging quality is coming up, competition's getting stiffer. And this is just one tiny little slice of the world. 15,000 brands you're out there up against. In our own experience, we seldom go out and seek brands because the target brands that we really desperately want in the portfolio, we tend to already be friends with them, and we tend to already have a relationship with them that we're building, that we're going to make real over the course of a few years. We decline dozens of brands for every bottle that we put into the portfolio. Dozens, sometimes even many, an order of magnitude. For every brand that actually comes in. So your task is to persuade us. How do you make your distributor or your importer excited and passionate about your product in light of all that competition? Point 2, the advice here is that you have to understand that they're now looking for the total package, just like you would be when you're out shopping for a spouse. You don't just want somebody who's, a good time on Fridays or somebody who is super, super pretty. You want somebody who's pretty and smart and has, really well-balanced emotional state and can guide you through life, on and on and on. It's true. It's real. What you want is the whole package, just like we all do in our lives. And that's what your distributors and importers are now looking for. And because of this vast amount of competition out there, they actually can shop for it now. And they didn't used to be able to because there were slimmer pickings before, but now there's not. How can you do that? How can you assemble the whole package? One is get your full suite of brand tools ready. This is everything from your corporate collateral to your social media to your terms and conditions that you would like to see, to your research from the market. Everything that you can assemble to make their job easier and to make them understand your product, understand where you're coming from, what you're trying to achieve, and give them the tools that they can run with. Second, you need to understand their needs in advance and prepare your terms in advance. Don't just rock up and think that having a beer or a cocktail or a coffee together is, you're going to click and hit it off and it's all going to be perfect. It's not the case. You need to do your research on these brands. And I really loved what Max said about the advantage of your home markets, about knowing all of the important factors in your home market. Well, if you're exporting, if you're going abroad, you're going to have to learn that stuff for each market, and it's not all the same. Third, you got to listen first. Try to be understood second. Try to understand them first. Be flexible and realistic. Be willing to offer value. And so you rocking up with a really beautiful product and a really high EXW and a whole set of expectations about volumes and such isn't going to get you very far in the conversation. You need to understand what their market is like, what they're looking for, what they need. So advice number 3, step number 3, get acquainted with rejection. Get comfortable with rejection. Just like when you're dating, you cannot expect a date to lead immediately to marriage. Most dates go nowhere, as is the case in life with humans, as is the case with spirits and distributors. It is akin to a first date when you meet a distributor or an importer, so be at your very best. Come prepared. Be at your absolute best. Don't get emotional or upset when they say no. It's amazing. All of us get so wound up in our brands and in our professional life. It means so much to us. I'm looking at these 2 legends up here, 5th and 6th generation tequileros. The identity of the brand is so important to the person. And it's true for all of us in this space. But we can't get emotional when a distributor or an importer gives you an answer that you don't like. And the reason is, number 3, you need to leave the door open for a future together that you don't yet know about. It is a remarkably small sector. Globally, none of us are more than 2 degrees removed from anybody else in the space globally. I promise you, all of you in this room can get on WhatsApp or Facebook right now and get to the CEO of practically any spirits company in the business. So we're a very, very small community, even though we're spread around the globe. And you never know how you're going to end up together at a later date. Advice number 4, flirting and dating are one thing, marriage is entirely different. This is about really coming to terms with what kind of marriage you want and being realistic with it. Don't go in blind, we talked about this. Do your research, be objective. Ask yourself if you can collaborate with this distributor, if you can collaborate with this importer, if you can face challenges together, because there will come challenges. There will be acrimony at some point. Forecasts, despite Dan's best work, will not be achieved. Target accounts that are so desired for particular reasons will not be captured. All kinds of things. Production on the supplier end will not happen when it was supposed to happen. So you need to be able to get through those challenges together just like you would in a marriage. Last point here is the best distributor, and I air quotes, the best distributor may not be the best for you. And we do this all the time where we meet brands and we say, listen, we love you, you think you're really cool, it's a great brand, you're a nice person, but we're just not suited for you. It's just not who we are. You need to find the brand, the importers and distributors that actually connect with who you are and what your brand is. And it doesn't matter what the reputation of the distributor or the importer is if it doesn't fit you. So you need to find the right person for you. Step 5. This is about having the hard conversation right at the outset. Like, don't get married and then have the hard conversations. Like, literally, don't get married and then decide, whether or not you're going to go to church or what school you're going to send your kids to. Have the hard conversation before you get married. And the hard conversation can all be summarized in one spreadsheet, the price build. And so all this conversation that we've been having earlier is all apropos of this. Because if you sit down and you actually work out that price build, market by market, and you figure out where the taxes are coming in and what the margin expectations are for each of the players involved, you will very quickly find out whether or not there's a deal to be had. And you can't figure that out 6 months later after you've perhaps oversold your position, and maybe the distributor even oversold their position. And all of a sudden now there's a margin gap, and somebody has to squeeze a little bit extra. That's a recipe for a bad marriage. There's other details here. A lot of the spirit space in the West really fixates on retail as the benchmark. It's not a benchmark in Asia. It just isn't. There is no retail business out there. So think about what your benchmarks are. When you're thinking of this price build, think about what your benchmarks are for each market, market by market. For us, it's trade pricing, actually, in most of Asia. Really dig into the effect of taxes in each market. People that come from, let's say, the UK or come from the US will have a certain tax model in their head. But when you get to Asia, Hong Kong is ad valorem, and it's 100% of EXW. Singapore is about $20 US per proof liter. 60 US dollars per proof liter, so about $20 US per bottle. So this has this crazy knock-on effects for how your brand gets benchmarked in the market. And you have to work through those details. You can't just come in and say, well, we price against Hendrix, and it doesn't work. You really have to dig into this price build, market by market. Lastly, understand that if you have a contract brand, if you're paying a distiller, you are effectively standing in the middle. That means there's less margin for everybody. So your distributor and importer is going to have a tougher time making your product work. There just isn't enough to go around, and you're going to have to be prepared to counteract that. Lastly, young markets expect bigger margins, and the reason is simple. If you're going into a Western market that's fully developed, you've kind of got that apparatus built, and you can plug into it. Hopefully, you can plug into it successfully. But in frontier markets, your distributor or importer is literally out there building the market. It costs money to build a market. Like, it really does. And so their margin expectations are greater. Last point, get aligned economically and spiritually up front. Again, this is all about getting your house in order. How are you going to build this marriage? Decide on that up front. Don't decide on it later. First is dig into pricing, credit terms, A&P, territory, exclusivity, information rights, which is reporting that Dan was talking about, forecast, which Dan was talking about. These things, from our perspective, we're actually pretty giving with the information. We're happy to give you the information, depending upon our trust level and depending upon the burden that the brand owner imposes. So if the brand owner wants all that information really regularly and in a unique ad hoc format that doesn't really work for us, it makes it hard for us. And that means we have to staff somebody to sit there and build telemetry for them. And we don't like that. It's inefficient. We'd rather go sell their product. On the other hand, if we have a really good trust relationship, we're likely to just open up the doors and just give the information to them. Interestingly, in our space, I'm really happy to report handshakes and contracts both work. It is remarkable how many important brands in important markets are distributed on a handshake. It seems crazy in the modern era. It's one of the things I treasure about this space. I love it about this space. And it's important to remember that it is a small space, and you guys are generally unlikely to sue each other. And even if you do, no one's likely to do business with you afterwards. So handshakes work pretty good in this space. That said, as you get professional, you'll want contracts, your investors will want contracts, etc. Last point, my last bit of advice, don't sell one vision of expectations and deliver another. If you say, we don't have any forecast expectations, back it up. Don't. If you do, say so up front. In other words, don't have this attitude of, I'm going to convince the distributor importer to take my brand, I'm going to romance them and get them to agree, then I'll sort out the details later. No, it's just a recipe for divorce. Sort out that vision and those expectations together right up front. There's my 6 steps, and I'm going to give you one. I'm just going to blast this all up here at once. If you think about it from the distributor's perspective, it's very, very helpful for you to arrange terms that make sense for you, that achieve your goals.
But how does the distributor look at it? And I think I really look at it not in terms of wishes and wants, but more in terms of fears and desires. And they have a certain set of desires of a perfect brand, just like we have the idea of a perfect spouse. But they also have a set of fears about what bad looks like. And those are usually born out from real relationships that didn't work so well, just like with all of us in life. What do they desire? Great product, great package, of course. What do they fear? Idiosyncratic, localized packaging of products. It's really hard to sell something that's uber specific to one country in most markets, unless you're tequila or something which is now global. What do they desire? Fair contract terms. I know it sounds silly, but the bigger the brands get, the more bullying they get with their terms. It gets fatiguing for the distributors. They want full collateral sets pre-built. They don't want to have to ask you for images. They don't want to have to ask you for advertisements. They don't have to wait a month while your creative agency cooks up an ad that probably doesn't even work in their local market. They want it pre-built. They want you to understand their market. They want you to know the tax basis. They want you to know what competitor brands are present. They want you to have a sense of what market that you're going into. They want your EXW to be low enough to be sustainable. There has to be enough margin in here for them to make money. If the EXW is too high, it's non-competitive. Your forecast will not be realized, and they won't do well with it either. They'd love 90 days of credit from pickup, and the bigger they get, the closer they get to that. What they won't like is prepayment or short terms. Remember, for instance, for our case, we have almost 5 months between the time we pay our average brand and the time that we collect from our average account. So 5 months where we have that capital extended out there. And so this isn't to say that there's a right answer here that's going to make everyone happy. This is just to say, remember where their working capital position is. They want a brand that provides reasonable A&P. They don't want onerous or no A&P. They want a brand that uses distributors reporting. They don't want a brand that requires custom reporting. They want a brand that listens to them, just like a spouse. They don't want a brand that thinks the brand knows best. They want good relationships with other brands. They don't want your brand to be fighting with another brand, which is remarkable given, you guys know we live in a world of humans, which means we have egos. There are brands that have spats with other brands. This is really not helpful for the distributor. And so on, and so on, and so on. And if you start to look at it this way, you can really package your offering in a way that makes sense and is persuasive for the distributor. And it will make your brand more attractive to them, and they will get behind it. And the last point I will leave you with is, when I think of the brands in our portfolio, again, 40 brand houses, 600 bottlings. When I think of the brands that we're killing it with, they all do the stuff on the left side of the screen, literally. The brands that we're killing it with have organized themselves in a way that works for us, and that just unlocks a whole world of potential for us. And it makes us so much more likely to put our weight behind them. It makes us so much more likely to really organize our efforts to support their brand's growth. And so again, that's a happy marriage. And that's really the point of this all.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Big round of applause for my panel today. Thank you.